As a sheltered, spoilt, overweight, autistic child living in a semi-feudal household, I didn't lead a life of wonderful memories. My attempts to impress my parents were almost met with silent judgment, and so I learned to shut myself away with the Beano and Action Man figures. I won't pretend I wasn't looked after. I'm grateful for the luxuries I had, but I feel life would have been a lot different had I not been without Zzzap. Yeah, we're almost past this soppy crap and getting to the part you're all here for. Almost. When I wasn't being mad at Super Star Wars and waiting for Spyro the Dragon to be invented, I was howling with laughter at the antics of Cuthbert Lily and being seduced by the music that played when the Handyman came on. I often blame Bottom for being an outlet for my unrelenting bonkers behaviour, but I'd not watched that for another 8 to 10 years after seeing the first comic come to life. No, it was Zzzap that made me the man I am today, for better or for worse. First aired on the 8th of January 1993, Zzzap fried the minds of pre-adolescents with goofy sketches, wily characters and an electrifying soundtrack. It's odd that a TV show aimed at the deaf and hard of hearing had such incredible music and made me so appreciative of sound design. Every splatter, whiz and overly evil laugh only heightened the on-screen comedy. Making the show in the style of a comic not only allows eccentric characters to dance around like loonies, but the onomatopoeia from comics makes sure people who can't hear the effects aren't missing out. You can tell how sensitive the cast were to their audience, and the Handyman sketches were a great example. When I can find footage, in some episodes the Handyman and audience would sign clapping rather than actually create a bloody racket. The lack of dialogue isn't at all off-putting, especially if you watched Art Attack, where many creations were filmed only with music. Speaking of Art Attack, the host of that show, Neil Buchanan, I apologise if I'm butchering the name there, produced Zzzap and plays Smart Arty, who's an artist here if you could imagine. Okay, I've veered way past the point where I wanted to go, so let's reel ourselves back into episode 1. No, I mean episode 1 of Zzzap, not Johnbonne reviews! The show opened up with a boy trying to sneak a copy of the Dandy out of the shop, but decides to nick the first issue of Zzzap because it comes with a free TV remote. You couldn't lose this custard-coloured controller down the back of your sofa, I can tell you. The lucky so-and-so manages to tear off the controller without ripping the page, which would never happen in the real world. The kid uses Castlevania logic and points the remote at the comic, zaps it, and brings the apocalypse by turning the 11-inch comic into an 18-foot wall of steaming paper. The topper equivalent of a Great Unclean One becomes animated, with manic and probably dangerous individuals luring people into the comic's panels, where they may never return. This nonsensical intro was filmed in Checkers Shopping Centre, but was abandoned past the first series. The location, which I now think is just called The Mall, would still be used for other sketches, especially for Smart Arty and Daisy Dares You. After the terrifying intro and the camera hovering over the different acts, teasing you as to which one will play next, the episode introduces you to one of the cast. Cuthbert Lily, who's dead silly, was always the first character to appear and one that had the most slapstick content, always managing to get himself into scrapes. Amongst the other personifications for mental illness, Lily was one of the most recognisable. His pink jacket and trousers, yellow shirt and messy hair immediately signalled televised calamity. Where Richard Waite's character was a bumbling and mostly harmless buffoon, Daisy Dares was more spiteful in her messy delivery of comedy. No matter if Cuthbert was in a restaurant, at a laundrette, walking a dog, or simply trying to have a nice time at the beach, he'd always manage to screw it up in a multitude of absent-minded ways. Sketches only lasted between 2 and 3 minutes, with episodes being 15 minutes in total, but the fountain of misfortune that was Cuthbert Lily always managed to make me chuckle with every disaster he got into. At least he mostly came out on top, which very rarely works in practical humour, but the media merchants and Meridian Broadcasting struck gold every time. Wade's other character was Tricky Dicky, a private dick who did nothing but dick around. Hang on, Dick's short for Richard, so he's playing as himself here? Welcome to the mindfuck that is Zzzap, folks. Anyway, Tricky Richard challenges kids to perform relatively easy tasks in difficult circumstances. His games include popping 1,000 balloons on a moving bus before time ran out, drinking milkshake on a bouncy castle, and reading the Daily Telegraph from cover to cover without vomiting blood. His episodes would end with him holding a sign Wile E. Coyote style, declaring if the mission was possible or not. I reckon most of these would be possible with sane adults. Tricky Ricky wouldn't see any more missions after Series 1, probably because parents thought he was creepy and luring kids onto a bus with balloons sent out the wrong message. However, he left his mark by bringing a different character with a similar style of content who would scare the living shit out of us in Series 2 onwards and make us fear women for the rest of our lives. Smart Arty is a mustachioed man in a dress who lives in the realms of the undrawn. Much like Neil Buchanan, we'll just say Neil B's own TV show, Smart Arse strips are always related to drawing, usually involving doodling things into reality and solving a problem with his satanic marker pen. The red sweating magician can't resist bringing his other show over to this paper-bound Twilight Zone with his gigantic drawings and other creative endeavours. In some episodes he'd team up with Cuthbert Lily and Daisy Dares to double the doodles and colour us impressed. One of the most clever things about Smart Arty is the tone. Even though it's aimed at children and most of it doesn't require Tricky Dicky to tell you it's impossible, the music is so goddamn fitting. Bocca ringing his string quartet works really well even with the silliest of sketches. No pun intended. Get it? Sketches? Smart Arty's an artist? Oh, never mind. The other characters besides Cuthbert Lily that appeared in Series 1 through 10 are the Handyman, played by Sarah Pickthall, or however you pronounce it. The Handymen were two gloved hands that performed magic tricks and prepared delicious food items. Well, they were delicious before my taste buds developed and now all I like is Marmite and kebab. I can't for the life of me think why I had a thing for the Handymen. I mean, they're just two sodding hands and now I can't get an erection without someone wearing marigolds and playing Memories of the Music Hall in the background. Forget I said that. Sarah does an impressive job, let's not go there, with everything she's featured in, enchanting me with the graceful and flawless movements of her wrist, and gently knocking the interrupting annotations out of the way. What's more is how everything is edited to be in time with the full length of their theme song. Even if you don't have a raging hard-on for these enigmatic gloves, you can't deny the effects would elude any youngster. Like, how can the actress see what she's doing behind that sheet of black without error? The Handymen are the most cryptic creatures of the Zappyverse and should be revered as gods among men. Last and definitely not least, the most villainous character I've constantly gone on about, Daisy Dares. Deborah McCallum donned the bright yellow top, black braces and checkered kneed trousers from Series 2 to 8 before being replaced by Claire McCauley for the last 2 seasons. Daisy Dares brings children to multiple locations to be humiliated in front of grown-ups for her own perverse pleasure. What may seem like innocent exercises become sadistic trials as the kids are often handicapped to make things more difficult and most certainly messier. Everything about her is iconic. The pigtails, the colour scheme, and the shit-eating grin that only spelt trouble, and her theme, Pocket Full of Peanuts, was like the 4-minute warning. If ever she was beaten, she'd be subjected to her own perilous challenges, and the war bus of the Bad Moons clan would leave the tiny people alone once more. For now. Zzzap wouldn't see any more characters until Series 8, where Minnie the Mini Magician starred and was played by Sophie Aldred of Doctor Who fame until the end of the show. I'd talk about her had I watched the episode she was in, but as far as I'm aware I didn't have a VHS with her appearances. Yeah, I couldn't see this on telly due to the times I get home from school, so I had to rewatch the same episodes on tape. There is one last feature of the show I'd like to cover, and that acted as the sanity break between the multiple minutes of madness. The question mark round was fairly straightforward. There's a scrambled image or close-up of an object and you'd have to guess what it was before it came fully into view. I never got this as a kid, even though I was bloody brilliant at catchphrase. Say what you see, folks, say what you see.
Welcome the man with all the catchphrases and much more.
Zzzap never took a break when it was leading us through the bedlam CITV funded for 8 years, and if we weren't laughing we were eagerly waiting for the next dose of undiluted pandemonium. Transitions between acts and jokes were never dull. The comic theme that played during the parts in between characters was almost as epic as a drum roll, the comic itself being full of stuff to gawk at. Who was the perpetually laughing clown at the top of the page, and who's trying to break out with only one leg at the bottom left corner? Zappologists have studied the jungle featured in Series 8 for a decade, but none dare speak of the terrors they witnessed. The gap separating one gag from another was the frame of a comic panel grinding to one side to transition to the next joke. The panel would then be zoomed in on, but the border was sometimes used as a visual joke to break the fourth wall. Well, another joke at least. My favourite has to be when Smart Arty is on the phone to Cuthbert Lily and it's supposed to be a split screen effect, only they're actually in the same room. Sure, it's old, but it's still satirical gold. Other elements of the comic are onomatopoeia used excessively and bright labels covering everything so you knew what was going on. We were kids then and stupid, so everything had to be labelled. That sort of carried into adult life, unfortunately. And the final thing I'd like to go into is the soundtrack. Yes, I know I've already talked about it, but this is my first TV show review, so cut me some slack, will ya? The music plays just as much a role as the actors in bellowing our chuckles. It's loud and it's proud, almost mocking the performers when things go wrong for them, yet it also punctuates their successes. On the 21st of September 2001, Zzzap saw the end of the 10th series. The funding of children's television was expensive, and most surviving episodes were filmed over on the tape because they'd hold no value to future generations. I totally and honestly disagree. Zzzap offers many things today's telly doesn't, like live actors with a passion for entertainment, memorable performances and silliness, and a use of audio that has become massively underappreciated. True, the show is rather tame and might not offer the fanciness of CGI, and it lacks the life lessons every show has, but Zzzap never needed to be any of that. We already had Rosie and Jim and Noddy and Bodger and Badger, but we didn't have enough Mr. Bean or the Dangerous Brothers. Zzzap worked with what it had, and its effects have aged really well. The jokes are still funny, the characters are still iconic, and the killer comic Kent still stalks the deepest bowels of my psyche. If you have children of your own, you might want to introduce them to the wacky world that is Zzzap, unless you want them to be successful in life, in which case stick to modern telly. But if you're a grown-up who watched this tripe when it was first aired, catch up on these memories and check out the episodes made available by the lovely users of YouTube. Oh, it's good to have my voice back on camera. Anyway, I want to give a big thank you to all the YouTubers who have shared these videos of Zzzap on the internet for us all to suffer in mass hysteria, and if it weren't for them, I wouldn't be able to relive my joy of this TV show, and I wouldn't be able to share my memories of it with you. Also, I'd like to give an even bigger thank you to the folks of Zzzap who have made Britain a bit more mental than it already was. I'm Johnbonne, number 1 source for number 2 games, and if you'll excuse me, I've got a date with the Handyman. Ta-ta for now!
Art attack. Art attack. Art attack.